Good morning, guys. Today is February 8th. Yes, February 8th. And today we're still in the book of Exodus and we're going chapter 9, verse 8 through chapter 10, verse 29. And Lord have mercy. I can see why this is a story that so many movies have been made about because is so rich in the way that God is showing up because for so many years, it's like you had this people that multiplied and did great, but then there became this big disconnect. So it's almost like they're being redeemed and established, but so much is going on. And we're in this big fight between God and Pharaoh because remember Moses and Aaron is just God's mouthpieces. So let me turn my phone off because we all know how my phone likes to go off. But we pick up today in chapter 9, verse 8, and that's when God did the plague of the festering bulls. But what was so interesting in this area is that God told them to go in front of Pharaoh and to take the soot and to like throw it into the air. So it was one of those things where it wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna go and something is gonna happen and I'm gonna let you know it was me who did it. It was like, no, this time it was in his face. So they did and they was obedient. And it was like once that happened, not even the magicians could stand before Moses anymore because they too were affected by the boils. So when they threw the soot in the air, it caused all of the people and all of the animals to have boils all over themselves. And so it said that at that point, though, it didn't phase Pharaoh because it just said that what the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart. And just as the Lord had predicted to Moses, Pharaoh refused to listen. So now we move into the next plague, and we go through a lot of the plagues in this next set of chapter that we're actually covering today. But everything is just so significant because now it's almost like the plague of hell. And one of the things that he said was that this is going to be something that you guys never seen before. And there was an actual warning that went out. And the warning was that anybody who's outside, like bringing your sheep, your cattle, your people, whoever is outside when this hail falls will not survive. So the warning went out, and it showed that some of the Egyptians actually heeded the warning because they saw what was going on and it was just like wow, like this God, like we're not going to play with it. But then you had others that didn't heed it and they lost their cattle because they did not bring those things in. So it was showing that with this one, that God didn't like let it stop. Like this was one of those things where it kept coming. And so Pharaoh came and he said that the Lord is the righteous one, and my people and I are wrong. Please beg the Lord to end this terrifying thunder in hell. We've had enough. I will let you go. You don't need to stay any longer. But this was the thing right here. Because Moses was like, that he was going to go and he was going to cry out to God before Pharaoh. But he said, I know that you and your officials still do not fear the Lord God. And that's just huge because I guess people can get to a point where everything can be taken from them, but it's almost like they can't accept that there's something in control, like outside of my power, like regardless of what they're seeing. And that like resembles like a hardening of the heart. Don't know how it got there, don't know why it's there, but it's really a hardening of the heart when you're not willing to like just see what's going on. So it was like, so of course, Moses went, pleaded to God, and then Pharaoh's heart got hardened. And so the next thing that he said was that, he was going to bring a storm of locusts and that it was going to devour the crops that the hailstorm didn't left behind. Because I guess the way the hailstorm came down, like a lot of stuff was destroyed, but not everything was destroyed. So it was like the next storm that was going to come with the locust, it was going to be that it was going to devour everybody, everything, right? And so after that, Pharaoh was like, his officials, now it's almost like the tables are turning, because at first it was like the people of Israel, when Moses came to them, they were the ones who received the front end of what was going on initially. But now it's Pharaoh and his people that's receiving the front end, because now at this part, God separated his people, so the people of Israel are not being affected the way the Egyptians are being affected. And so now the officials for Pharaoh, the Egyptians are coming to Pharaoh like, how long will you let this man hold us hostage? Let the men go and worship the Lord their God. Do you not realize that Egypt is in ruins? So this is a big, big, big turn of events. But it's one of those things, Pharaoh's heart just was not moved. So Pharaoh was like, you can go and you can leave. Um, but only the men can go, because Pharaoh felt like, oh, that's a little bit too much for you to take your children and all of your livestock. He was like, no. He was like, only the men could go. And Moses was like, all right, so be it. So when Moses left, what happened? The locust came, and it said that it came and it swarmed and it covered everything. Like by the time it was over, it said the locusts covered the whole country and darkened the land. They devoured every plant in the fields and all the fruit on the trees that had survived the hailstorm. No single leaf was left on the trees and plants throughout the land of Egypt. This was in chapter 10, verse 15. And so it's like, of course, now Pharaoh summons him back. And of course, Moses goes and he pleaded with the Lord. So it was one of those things where now it's almost like Moses, like they both accepted their parts, but now Moses is seeing who's really on his side. And it's one thing, I guess, when you get to read about this great God and know that this great God was there for so many people, but it's so different when he's showing up in your life in a way that you couldn't have even anticipated. But now he's accepting his role as this mediator between God and Pharaoh, like the actual God of the earth, and a man who thought he was a God. And I think that was one of the things that, Pharaoh became to realize that there was somebody higher than him, but at the same token, he didn't fear him. And that was the problem with the hardening. And it's like it's important that we have that fear, right? And so after he went back, and then I think the last thing that we get to do, that we get to see, is that once he lifted up, and then it was like I think when Pharaoh called him back, I'm sorry, when Pharaoh called him back, he said, "Go and worship the Lord, but leave your flocks here. You may even take your little ones with you." And Moses was like, "No, like we have to have something to sacrifice." Like God's desire never changed. His desire was for his people to come into the wilderness and to worship him. And the way that they knew how to worship God was with sacrifices. So God didn't change his stance. And at this point, Moses, like, he didn't have to go have a conversation with God, because he knew what God's stance was. So when he was talking to Pharaoh, he stood on God's stance. He was like, no, we need to take all of this stuff with us. And so once again, Pharaoh hardened his heart and he didn't let them go, because I think it was that control. I guess you look at, like, you've lived in this great place that has all of this great wealth and all of these great things. It just doesn't make sense to you that a people that was your slaves, I guess, is now rising up in a manner where they're telling you what it is that they want to do. And it's so unacceptable, but that's exactly what's going on. And so one of the things that is said, after God on, you know, his heart, it talks about the plague of darkness. And the thing that I put was in verse 21. It says, the darkness was so thick you can feel it. Like, I never want to feel darkness. Like, been places where you can't see in front of you. And that was enough for me. Like, thank God for that little flashlight on our phones because we all know we have like a phone. Because it's like if you ever get into a place where even when you steady yourself, like your eyes can't process, but to feel darkness, like I don't even want to understand what that's like. I'm just going to see what the word says and go with that's what happened. But I know for me, it's something I would never want to experience, actually feel darkness. But this was actually like the next to the last plague. So it was a big one. And so it says, I'm trying to see because I wanted to read something. It was saying that the only place that there was light was in Goshen, where um yeah, and I thought that that was so powerful because this was in verse 23. It says, during all that time, the people could not see each other and no one moved, but there was light as usual where the people of Israel lived. Oh my goodness. Come on. Salt and light. I'm going to just throw that in there for little people that's a little bit more seasoned. But it's one of those things like we're called to be light. It doesn't matter what's going on. And that's going to come a light that has to come from in you. And it's going to just go back to the beginning of all of this is feeding your spirit. Like your spirit has a glow, your spirit has a light that's connect and it connects you to God. It'll start to connect you to other people, but there's a light, Lord, that can come out in a place when people are in darkness so thick that they can feel it, but there is a light. Like that is the ultimate thing for me. When I was reading this, I had to stop because of something that God was showing me earlier that I couldn't see. And it was one of those things when people tell you things, and it's like in my mind, like I'm listening and I'm hearing, but I don't understand. But it's like I'm one of those people who it's like when I really have to stop and like surrender my heart to God, like God will show me, and I'll be like, then it'll start clicking everything that everybody else was telling me. And I don't know what that is about me. And I think God is helping me through it. And even doing this Bible study, because again, this is the longest study that I have committed to, and actually doing these recordings, I'm hoping that somebody else gets blessed by it, but I know that it is blessing me so, so, so much because God is so intentional. Getting in His Word is so rewarding, and just seeing who He is, how He moves, the things that He's able to do it's just something that'll have you in awe. So that was it. So now we get to the last one. And of course, Pharaoh's heart hardened, like with all of this darkness, because he wasn't willing um to let the people go. Like, after Moses got the darkness, like, the reverse, he wasn't willing to let the people take their animals. So it's like we back to where we are, but it's so different because at this time it says I think when it says with Pharaoh like he would not let them go, and verse 28 says get out of here, Pharaoh shouted at Moses. I am warning you, never come back to see me again. The day you see my face you will die. This is Pharaoh, because in his mind he still had power and he still had control. Come on now, be afraid. All right. And the last thing that Moses said was very well. Moses replied, I will never see your face again. Come on. That went from a man who was tongue tied, didn't even know how he was going to get in front of that man, to actually starting to understand what God was doing more than what he was doing. And he got to the point where I guess the fear of Pharaoh left him because it's one of those things. Like, I guess when God is on your side, really, who can you fear? And this is me preaching to myself. So just thank you for the journey and the ride that you're taking with me. One of the things that I wanted to do at the end of today was I don't know who's jocking with me, but tomorrow for February 9th, we're going to be in Exodus, and we're going to read chapters 11 and chapter 12. So I don't know if anybody makes it this far in my little thing and you want to kind of prepare for tomorrow to help out with some comments and some feedback. I would truly, truly, truly appreciate it. I love you and have a blessed day.